So you're driving along a road and you see the sign, roadworks ahead. Traffic lights. A frustration, of course, often in life could mean delays, but a necessity where the road needs to be repaired, remade, or even rerouted. The simple control of stop and go. Well, we're turning to the letter of James today. And unlike the letters of Paul, which of course are the majority of the letters, to my mind there is something a little bit more simple and straightforward to the letter of James. And whereas Paul tends to use quite long arguments and long sentences and lots of subtlety of thought, there's something really quite simple and straightforward about the letter of James. Stop and go. And if there is strength to the argument that this is written by the James that we otherwise know of, James, the brother of Jesus, then that would kind of make sense. Because, and of course, scholars will argue long and hard about this, but if it does come from the time of James or from that line of thought, then this is, number one, very early, because James was the leader of the Jerusalem church in its very earliest days. And number two, it will come from a very Jewish Christian place, of course, Jerusalem, the heart of that early Jewish Christian community that was sometimes at loggerheads with Paul's view of Christianity as a mission to the Gentiles. But if this is coming from that time, then there might well have been something of that sense of roadworks, as that Jewish Christian community does serious work on how it reinterprets its faith in the light of the resurrection of Jesus. And in that situation, one could well imagine that stop-go mentality of reordering the life of the faithful in the immediacy of the work that needs to go on to reimagine the life of faith. So let's listen, and listen for those stop-go messages. It's from James chapter 1 and starting at verse 17. Every generous act of giving with every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shadow due to change. In fulfillment of his own purpose, he gave us birth by the word of truth, so that we will become a kind of first fruits of his creatures. You must understand this, my beloved. Let everyone be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger, for your anger does not produce God's righteousness. Therefore, rid yourselves of all sordidness and rank growth of wickedness, and welcome with meekness the implanted word that has the power to save your souls. But be doers of the word, and not merely hearers who deceive themselves. For if any are hearers of the word and not doers, they are like those who look at themselves in a mirror. For they look at themselves and, on going away, immediately forget what they were like. But those who look into the perfect law, the law of liberty, and persevere, being not hearers who forget, but doers who act, they will be blessed in their doing. If any think they are religious and do not bridle their tongues, but deceive their hearts, their religion is worthless. Religion that is pure and undefiled before God the Father is this: to care for orphans and widows in their distress, and to keep oneself unrestrained by the world. So what are these traffic lights saying as we imagine this Jewish Christian community doing serious work on what it means to be people of faith? Well, there is, I think, first of all, a green light. to that absolute vision of God that, of course, would have come from their Jewish faith as the Father of lights, the Father over all things, the one in whom all creatures have their being, a green light to all that. But a very firm red light to kinds of speech, the kinds of speech that lead to anger, and in the language of James then, to all kinds of rank growth of wickedness. The tongue needs to be bridled, as the New Testament does sometimes remind us. Speech can cause all kinds of harm if it's not kept in check. A green light then to listening, and of course it's common wisdom to spend more time listening than speaking, to listen and to reflect on the law of liberty, as the reading calls us, again something that will be core to the life of these believers whose roots are in the Jewish faith. A green light to that. A red light, though, to being what we in our own age would call navel gazers, who do all that listening and reflecting but then never get any further. And of course the brightest green light in this passage is to be doers of the word, to put your faith into action and to care for the orphans and widows. Orphans and widows were often the key description of those in need in Israelite society. I'm sure within the life of our church there'll be all kinds of more subtle debates and arguments about what it might mean to be faithful in our living out of the life of Jesus today. But sometimes it is helpful just to have those simple red and green lights, and I wonder how they will impact on our life. A green light to that absolute faith in the God who is above all things and the creator of all things. A red light to the poor use of language that can lead us into dispute and into unhelpful places. A green light to that careful listening to one another and a reflection on what the life of God might be calling us to. A red light to those times when we simply get caught in the words and the talking and the endless talking that leads nowhere. But a green light to be people of action and to put our faith into action. It's simple, but it's spot on.